When you hear names like Aladdin, Alibaba, and Sinbad, the first thing that probably comes to mind is the classic 1001 Nights tales, that nostalgic vibe of deserts, flying carpets, and genies who grant 3 wishes. It's the kind of adventure that shaped a lot of people's childhoods, especially thanks to those famous Disney versions. But what if I told you there's a story that takes all that mythology and turns it into an insane, high-stakes shonen anime? That's exactly what Magi does. Forget the harmless bedtime stories you're used to. This is a whole different level. Instead of simple fairy tales, we're thrown into a world full of deadly dungeons, slavery, heavy political intrigue, and a spiritual war that could decide the fate of humanity. We follow a young magician, a disgraced prince, and a former slave as they try to figure out who truly deserves to be king. It's the perfect mix of magic, epic battles, and existential crisis. So get ready, because today on the channel, Magi, the Arabian fairy tale that grew up and got serious. The story begins with glowing butterflies fluttering through ancient ruins like something out of a fantasy movie. Suddenly, a scream echoes, and the butterflies converge in a massive explosion. A gigantic, blue-skinned man shields a boy with blue hair and a long braid from the falling debris. The boy drops to his knees, saying he'd rather die than live trapped. He asks who the giant is, and the giant replies that he cannot say, but he will grant the boy one wish, calling him king and Magi.
Who am I anyway?
My king, O venerable one.
Cut to a blonde teenager, Alibaba, carrying some boxes. He's working for a guy named Lord Boudel. A co-worker asks why he works for a man like that, and Alibaba replies that the gig will help him achieve his goal, to conquer a dungeon. The guys laugh in his face, but he's dead serious. While arranging the cargo, Alibaba finds a small, blue-haired boy, Aladdin, devouring the watermelons from one of the carts. Before he can do anything, Lord Boudel shows up and sees the mess. Aladdin, completely clueless, starts the Lord. Alibaba tries to apologize, but his boss is furious and sentences him to work for free until the damages are paid off. That night, Alibaba is pissed about the situation when he discovers that Aladdin has not only hidden in his room, but has also eaten all his fruit. He complains out loud that he needs cash and a dungeon. Aladdin, curious, asks what a dungeon is, and Alibaba explains that they are places filled with treasure, and the grand prize is a metal vessel with a djinn inside.
Dungeons are strange and mysterious ruins that started appearing all over the world, about gold and silver treasures and magical items.
The next day, Aladdin becomes Alibaba's shadow, constantly asking about dungeons. Alibaba points to a tower in the city, the 7th dungeon, Amon. He declares he's going to conquer it to get rich and score with the ladies. In the middle of their conversation, they bump into a red-haired girl who drops a basket of lemons. Alibaba notices she has shackles on her ankles. She's a slave. Aladdin, not understanding what slavery is, takes out his flute and out of nowhere shatters the girl's shackles.
There, no more chains. Now you can walk around without hiding your pretty leg.
The commotion draws Lord Boudel's attention, and he threatens to turn Alibaba into a slave. But Aladdin blows his flute again, and 2 giant blue arms emerge from it, knocking out the guards. Alibaba and Aladdin make a run for it, while the girl flees in another direction. Aladdin and Alibaba finally enter the dungeon, but the place is straight out of an RPG death trap. First, they nearly drown. Then, they're almost roasted alive. To make matters worse, they run into an army of bizarre, alien-like ants. With the help of the massive Ugo, they manage to clear the area, but victory comes at a price. Aladdin collapses from exhaustion. Apparently, summoning Ugo drains the kid's battery, and he needs to recharge by eating or taking a well-deserved nap. While Alibaba tries to look after the unconscious little hero, things go south. Morgiana shows up with her jerk of a master, Jamil, and the silent brute, Goltaz. Jamil has been hunting Aladdin, whom he calls a Magi, and wastes no time in capturing the boy. Using some classic villainous manipulation, he convinces Alibaba to join the group, effectively turning the street urchin into their official trap disarmer. The group pushes forward until they reach a particularly cruel fire trap. Alibaba is sent in to deal with it and poof, the blonde boy is swallowed by the flames. Meanwhile, Aladdin wakes up under Morgiana's watch. Taking advantage of their moment alone, Aladdin uses his innocent charm to get her to talk. The conversation gets deep, with Morgiana opening up about her homeland and the invisible chains that bind her to Jamil. She's in the middle of explaining how Alibaba died when, surprise, Alibaba himself himself shows up right above them, alive and well. Without wasting a second, the two find a way to escape and make a run for it until they reach a massive gate. Pushing it isn't enough. The door requires both of their hands and a magic spell to open. When the barrier finally dissolves, they find themselves staring at an entire underground city hidden beneath the surface. Things really heat up in the dungeon's inner chamber, with Jamil and Morgiana once again going after Alibaba and Aladdin. It gets ugly when Morgiana corners Alibaba, ready to deal the final blow, but at the last second, Aladdin unleashes his powers and stops her, saving his friend's skin. The energy released is so powerful that it summons a new djinn, Amon. Amon essentially congratulates them, confirming they've cleared the stage and conquered the dungeon. What's more, he addresses Aladdin as a Magi, revealing the boy's special status. Jamil, seeing his plan go down the drain, tries to play the part of the predestined king his teacher told him about, but his speech convinces no one. To make matters worse, the entire dungeon begins to crumble, apparently the work of another Magi who couldn't care less about their party. In the middle of the destruction, Goltaz takes a drastic step and sacrifices himself, taking Jamil with him to the afterlife. Meanwhile, Amon helps Aladdin, Alibaba, and Morgiana get out of that hole alive. In the chaos of the escape, the trio is separated. Morgiana ends up on the city's periphery, while Aladdin is dropped in the middle of nowhere. Alibaba, the lucky one this time, reappears right where the dungeon once stood, now with all the treasure in hand and being greeted like a rock star by the crowd. He has no idea that the Jinn Amon has made a new home in his sword and just stands there, basking in the glory, wondering where the hell Aladdin went.
Coming soon, right? I'll be waiting, Aladdin.
3 days have passed with no sign of Aladdin. Alibaba, now worried, decides it's time to hit the road to find his friend. Meanwhile, Aladdin wakes up in a completely different scene, finding himself in the middle of a nomad camp. He is welcomed by the leader of the Kolga clan, Chagan. The peace is short-lived, as Princess Kou of the Kou Empire shows up with a proposal of annexation, like when a school bully wants you to join their gang, but Chagan gives her a hard no thanks. Aladdin, sensing trouble brewing, goes to have a word with the princess, who promises to resolve things peacefully, without anyone getting hurt. But the universe doesn't cooperate. Slave traders kidnap some of the clan's women. The warriors ride out to rescue them with a clear order: no killing, so as not to give the empire an excuse for war. While they wait, Shagim gives Aladdin a history lesson explaining how the Kolga were once the world's greatest empire, led by a king chosen by a Magi. Magi. Sounds familiar, right? The warriors return with the women. Mission accomplished without any bloodshed.
We rescued them without killing anyone!
Shagin, seeing the princess's goodwill, announces that the clan will join the Kou Empire, but in the middle of her speech, an arrow strikes her out of nowhere. Aladdin rushes off with the shaman in his arms, in a race against time to save her. Meanwhile, Kou discovers that one of her soldiers was killed with a Kolga clan arrow. The story doesn't add up. She goes to the clan to understand what happened, but no one believes her. To prove she doesn't want to fight, she even allows herself to be wounded without retaliating. Aladdin arrives with Chagan, who, with her dying breath, reaffirms the alliance with the Empire and passes away, but not before her spirit appears to Aladdin and drops the bombshell: "You are a Magi. We figured as much."
That makes you a Magi. And so, as you can see, you're really not alone, Aladdin.
Kou returns to her camp and catches her advisor, Ryosai, red-handed. He orchestrated everything to kill her and seize power, basically a miniature coup. The princess and her attendant throw down against the soldiers, but her magical artifact runs out of juice mid-fight. Game over? Not a chance. Aladdin swoops in to save the day. Using his powers, Aladdin summons Hakuei's djinn, a being named Paimon, and Paimon drops another revelation. Hakuei is her king. Wait, king for a princess? This is getting more and more complex.
A very good day, everyone. My name is Paimon. My mistress is the Queen Wren Hakuei.
6 months on the road, Morgiana is almost in Balbadd to catch a ship home, but her caravan has to take a detour because of some bandits. Morgiana, who doesn't take crap from anyone, decides to handle it herself, but it goes south. She's defeated by a slave trader who paralyzes her with the poisonous talons of his eagle, back in chains. She wakes up chained near a sick child. The heartless traders decide to throw the little girl to the beasts. Seeing the horrifying scene, Morgiana hears Goltaz's voice in her head, like a get up and fight, and that's exactly what she does. She shatters her chains with sheer force, protects the child, and beats the crap out of the traders. Talk about girl power.
Free!
When she goes to free the other prisoners, who does she find? Aladdin. Shortly after, the people from her caravan arrive and see the bandits running in fear from Ugo. The big blue giant's reputation precedes him. After they regroup, Morgiana learns that Aladdin is also headed to Balbadd to find Alibaba. It seems like fate is bringing the gang back together. The journey continues, now as a duo. Aladdin and Morgiana are casually walking along when they find a naked guy in the middle of nowhere who was robbed of everything, right down to his underwear. They decide to help the poor guy and take him to the city of Balbadd. Once there, plot twist. The naked man is none other than Sinbad, the king of Sindria. The guy is royalty. Sinbad explains that he came to Balbadd to negotiate the reopening of trade, but the local rulers have a huge problem. A group of bandits called the Fog Troop is wreaking havoc, and to make things even more tense, the leader of this gang is Alibaba. Yes, that Alibaba. To catch the culprits, Sinbad comes up with a plan straight out of a heist movie. He and his bodyguard Mosfer keep watch at one location, while another advisor, Jafar, along with Aladdin and Morgiana, covers another spot. The Fog Troop walks right into the trap, attacking and easily overpowering the city guard. When Aladdin and Morgiana move in to fight, the troop's leader removes his mask, and it's Alibaba, leaving Aladdin completely shocked. What a reunion, huh? Alibaba completely ignores Aladdin, says he can't keep the promise he made, and vanishes in a puff of smoke using his fire sword. Basically, a magical "I'm out." Later, Morgiana, who is not one to be trifled with, simply kidnaps Alibaba and drags him in front of Aladdin to get a proper explanation. No more messing around. Meanwhile, Sinbad discovers that the Kou Empire is putting pressure on Balbadd, like an international loan shark forcing the country to use their currency. Things are getting ugly behind the scenes. Then comes the flashback that explains everything. Alibaba reveals he grew up in the slums with his friend Cassin, who is now the big boss of the Fog Troop. After his mother died, he was taken in by his father, who is the king of Balbadd. Yes, the guy is a lost prince. On his deathbed, the king asked Alibaba to take the throne, but the kid hesitated, snuck out of the castle, and ran into Cassin. In his innocence, Alibaba showed him some secret passages, and Cassin used the information to invade the palace with his cronies. A huge screw-up that Alibaba regrets to this day. Alibaba finishes telling his tragic story. After Cassin's attack, his father died, and he fled the country, feeling like the most guilty person in the world. It was only after meeting Aladdin that he found the courage to return to Balbadd and face the consequences. But upon arriving, he was hit with another bombshell. The slum where he grew up was gone. The government had demolished it after an epidemic killed Cassin's sister. That's when Cassin convinced him to become the leader of the Fog Troop. The plan was to fight against the new king, Ahmad, who was Alibaba's brother, and a terrible ruler who is leaving the people in poverty. And who is listening to all this from the next room? Sinbad, the most powerful, nosy neighbor you'll ever meet. Suddenly, the Fog Troop invades the hotel to kill Sinbad and rescue Alibaba, but the plan goes wrong. Sinbad and his crew are basically the Avengers and defeat everyone without breaking a sweat. Instead of arresting them, Sinbad acts like a life coach and convinces Alibaba to go with him to the palace to try and talk some sense into his brother, the king. The next day, Ahmad refuses to listen. Outside, in the crowd, Aladdin and Morgiana wait when a strange man walks past them and Aladdin's spidey sense starts tingling. More trouble is on its way.
What was that?
A new guy shows up and introduces himself as Judar, an oracle from the Kou Empire who has business with Ahmad. Completely ignoring Alibaba, Ahmad drops a bombshell on Sinbad. Following the advice of someone named Markio, he has signed over all of Balbadd's trade rights to the Kou Empire. In other words, the deal with Sindria is off the table. Back at the Fog Troop's base, Sinbad informs the people from the slums that the negotiations failed. But for some reason, Cassin and his crew have vanished off the map, Houdini style. Out of nowhere, Judar appears before Sinbad and notices that the Rook, those little butterflies of energy, act strangely around Aladdin. Sinbad then reveals the secret. Aladdin is a Magi, just like him. Without warning, Judar starts attacking Aladdin. Ugo, the blue giant, emerges from the flute to play bodyguard. Judar doesn't stop, attacking Aladdin with ice spears, and Ugo uses his own body as a shield to protect the boy. Aladdin tries to get the injured Ugo to return to the flute, but he refuses. Judar then impales the jinn with a giant ice spear, but Ugo uses his last ounce of strength to crush the bastard with his bare hands. It's a scene straight out of God of War. Just as Judar is about to be turned into a pancake, he's saved by a Kou Empire princess and her attendant, who immediately begins treating his wounds. Ugo, though completely wrecked, tries to attack again, but the princess defeats him with the help of her own djinn, Vinia. The blue giant didn't stand a chance. Aladdin, consumed by rage, throws himself at the princess, who orders her servants to kill everyone there. But then Sinbad steps in full diplomat mode and convinces the lady to back down. He always knows how to calm things down. While tending to the wounded, Alibaba and Morgiana find an unconscious Aladdin. He used up almost all his Magoi trying to bring Ugo back and is now in critical condition. Alibaba feels useless, unable to help, and with Qasim still missing. It's at this low point that his other brother, the Viceroy Sabmad, appears. Sinbad, who is no fool, deduces that Sabmad was the one leaking military information to the Fog Troop. He confesses he did it all to protect Alibaba, whom he believes is the only one who can stop Ahmad. And then comes the shocking revelation. Ahmad has racked up a massive debt with the Kou Empire and plans to pay it off by selling the people of Balbadd as slaves. Upon hearing this, Morgiana practically forces Alibaba to take a stand. Before heading back to the palace, Sabmad drops a bombshell. In 5 days, Ahmad will marry a princess from the Kou Empire, and at the celebration, will announce his plan to enslave everyone. It's the complete villain package. A while later, with Aladdin still in a coma, Sinbad lays it all out for Alibaba. To stop Ahmad's plans and prevent the country from being taken over by the Kou Empire, he needs to seize the throne of Balbadd. No pressure, right? Alibaba wanders the streets, processing this insane idea when Qasim approaches him. He reveals he already knows about the slavery plan, and with the help of an arms dealer, plans to start a rebellion in 2 days. It's the burn it all down solution. Alibaba refuses, saying he'll find a way to solve things without anyone dying. After getting shot down by Qasim, he seeks out Sinbad and asks to be trained in the use of his djinn.
No good. You've got to converge the flames more.
Got it!
Do anything, so watch out.
What should I do?
Morgiana tries to find Alibaba, but he's vanished. She realizes he's going to confront his brother alone. Meanwhile, at the palace gates, Alibaba faces the guards, demanding to be let in. The show is about to begin. Alibaba finally manages to break into the palace, but King Ahmad isn't playing around and sends one of the Kou Empire's guards to take him out. After taking a beating, Alibaba finally manages to use Ahmad's sword correctly, like when you finally learn a special combo in a video game. The first guard is down for the count, but then the second one appears, backed by an army of monkeys, blocking the path. It seemed hopeless, but Morgiana shows up out of nowhere to back him up, like a tag team partner jumping into the ring. With the path clear, Alibaba presses forward. The problem is, during the fight with the third guard, his Magoi runs out. His mana bar is empty. Without magic, he resorts to his wits. He uses oil to create a flame, and give his sword a 1-second power boost, just enough to take down the enemy. A true desert MacGyver.
I'm out!
Meanwhile, Sinbad finds out about the mess and rushes to the palace as well. With all the bodyguards on the floor, Alibaba reaches the throne room. Ahmad, the spoiled king, orders his guards to kill him, but Sabmad, the other brother, steps in and demands that the two talk it out. Time for a family showdown. Alibaba tries to use diplomacy to convince Ahmad to give up the throne, but their argument is interrupted by Kou, the princess they'd met before. She arrives to lay down the law, warning them it's not that simple. Even if Ahmad steps down, another king must be chosen to marry her as part of Balbadd's deal with the Kou Empire. And there's more. All agreements, including the slavery treaty, must be upheld. But Alibaba has an ace up his sleeve and drops a bombshell. He declares there will be no king at all, because Balbadd's monarchy will be abolished and replaced with a republic. Basically, an hasta la vista baby to the royalty. At that moment, Sinbad arrives with his crew, the Seven Seas Alliance, which sounds like a superhero group. He offers to sort things out directly with the Kou Emperor, which makes Kou back down immediately. As Alibaba announces his decision to the people, a strange energy, the Rook, begins to gather around Aladdin and Judar. To make matters worse, Qasim and his men are marching toward the palace, and they don't look like they're coming for a party. Qasim isn't a fan of Alibaba's peaceful solution. For him, it's not enough to remove the royals from power. They need to be executed for their crimes. With this speech, he incites a rebellion, and chaos erupts once again.
Buried aren't coming back, you know!
It's true. Even if we became a republic, it still wouldn't bring my daughter back to me.
Far away, Aladdin's spirit is taken to Ugo, who is now just a floating head. Ugo gives him the straight talk. Alibaba and the others are in danger because of a shady group that wants to disrupt the flow of the Rook and cover the world in darkness. To prevent this, Ugo sends Aladdin through a portal to receive the wisdom of Solomon, a major upgrade. But the news comes with a bitter twist. Ugo bids him a final farewell, saying they will never meet again. Back at the palace, Alibaba confronts and defeats Cassin and the rest of the Fog Troop. But instead of surrendering, Cassin makes one last insane move. He stabs himself with his magic sword. This draws all the other troop members' swords into his body, transforming him into a giant, shadowy monster. It just got personal, and it's turned into a final boss fight.
Shit, here we go again.
Cassin has now become a dark djinn, like a video game boss in shadow mode, and poor Alibaba is stuck in a I can't kill my friend mindset, which only gives Cassin an opening to shatter his sword. Sinbad tries to lend a hand and weaken the giant monster, but Judar pops up out of nowhere to crash the party. He holds Sinbad back and, to make things worse, takes control of Cassin like an evil puppeteer. Fueled by all the black rook generated by the conflict in Balbadd, Judar and Cassin become superpowered and go after Alibaba. Things get ugly, and they're about to deliver the final blow and send our blonde hero to his grave. But then, Aladdin appears, shining brighter than a Christmas tree. He's enveloped in a massive aura of pure Rook, like a guardian angel arriving in the nick of time.
Is that a white giant?
With all this power, he effortlessly deflects Judar's attacks and invites Alibaba to team up. Let's save Cassin together. It's time for the dynamic duo to reunite and handle this mess once and for all. Aladdin gives Alibaba's sword a temporary power-up, and Alibaba uses it to dive deep into the dark djinn. It's like a journey into Cassin's soul, where he finally understands his friend's hatred and convinces him to let go of his vengeful path. The plan works. Cassin's body returns to normal, but the transformation takes its toll, and he dies. A tragic end for his friend. Meanwhile, Judar is rescued by an arms dealer and taken to meet his bosses, a sinister organization called Al-Tharmen. The arms dealer's body, however, is obliterated by Sinbad, who has finally recovered his stolen metal vessels. With the secondary villain out of the picture, Aladdin uses his power for one last emotional trip. He allows the people of Balbadd a brief reunion with the spirits of their departed loved ones. It's like a video call with the afterlife. Alibaba himself gets to see his parents, Cassin, and his deceased sister one last time to find closure. With everything settled and no more reason to fight, the rebellion in Balbadd finally comes to an end.
Solomon's wisdom!
Mother.
With peace restored, Alibaba becomes the foreman, helping to rebuild Balbadd and even establishing a democratic government. In the midst of it all, he's bitten by a strange snake that vanishes into thin air, a detail worth remembering. But the tranquility doesn't last long. A massive fleet from the Kou Empire appears, ready for an invasion. Alibaba wants to play the hero and defend his country, but Sinbad has other plans. To protect the kid, he simply knocks Alibaba out and ships him off to Sindria along with Aladdin and Morgiana. Months later, Sinbad returns with bittersweet news. Balbadd has lost its sovereignty to the Empire, but the people's rights have been guaranteed. He also drops a bombshell. The entire conflict in Balbadd was orchestrated by Al-Tharmen, and he needs their help to stop the organization from spreading chaos across the world. To prove he has the firepower, Sinbad sends two of his generals, Yamaraiha and Sharkan, to hunt a monster that appeared out of nowhere, introducing them as future teachers for Aladdin and Alibaba. Later, they throw a huge party where Morgiana asks the boys to continue fighting by their side. The loyalty is real. Meanwhile, a prince from the Kou Empire is on his way to study in Sindria, and with him is Kogyoku, who for some reason holds a deadly grudge against Sinbad. This is gonna get messy. While Aladdin is getting a magic lesson from Yamaraiha, Sinbad, who's no fool, gives Alibaba a new sword. And it's not just any sword. It belonged to his late father, and will replace the broken knife that was Amon's metal vessel. Morgiana also needs to choose an item, but instead of picking something something fancy, she decides to forge a household vessel from the very same shackles she wore as a slave. Heavy, right? Turning a symbol of pain into power. Quite poetic. Suddenly, a Kou Empire fleet arrives, carrying the fourth prince, Hakuryu, accompanied by Kogyo-ku, and she comes in hot Jerry Springer style, accusing Sinbad of taking advantage of her while she was asleep during his last visit to the Emperor. Sinbad is left completely dumbfounded.
Lady Red and Kogyo-ku?
Huh?
To clear things up, Yamaraiha uses her magic for a sort of live paternity test and discovers it was all a scheme by Kolbun to force Sinbad to marry the princess. The classic honey trap 2.0. After the dust settles, in a private conversation, Prince Hakuryu drops a bomb. He wants to destroy the Kou Empire from within, as it has been completely taken over by Al-Tharmen. He's an inside man in the snake's nest. Upon learning Hakuryu's motives, Sinbad, acting as a mentor, tells him to take it slow and get to know the people of Sindria first. But when Alibaba finally meets Hakuryu, a voice in his head screams, "Hate this guy," and he promptly faints, totally normal. Examining Alibaba, they discover that the snake bite he got back in Balbadd has spread and turned into a dark wound on his body. To make matters worse, the Al-Tharmen agent everyone thought was dead emerges from the wound. It's like the chest burster scene from Alien, but with a curse mark. Sinbad strikes the creature, causing its dark blood to splatter onto him, cursing him too. It's like a virus. Whoever gets touched is infected. Before vanishing, the villain explains that Alibaba and Sinbad will now fall into depravity and turn evil. The only cure? Conquering a new dungeon called Zagan, which conveniently holds a gem that can cure any illness. The problem is, Sinbad already has 7 djinns, like a max level player who can't enter a starter zone. So he sends in the B team, Aladdin, Morgiana, Alibaba, and the newcomer Hakuryu to do the dirty work. Together, they set off for the island of Zagan, with Pisti, one of Sinbad's generals, as their chaperone. Upon arrival, a small child appears, asking them to rescue her parents, who are trapped in the dungeon. Then, a strange light pulls them all inside. Welcome to Zagan.
What the?
Inside, they come face to face with bizarre creatures, like a zoo straight out of a nightmare. Soon, Zagan himself, the djinn of the dungeon, appears, holding the little girl from before as a hostage. He warns them that to save her and the other islanders, they'll have to pass his trials. It's like a game of Saw, but with magic. The group does pretty well, but Hakuryu is in I'll-do-it-myself mode and ends up being more of a hindrance than a help. You know that one player who never passes the ball and loses the game? That's him. Zagan shows no mercy and starts mocking the prince, telling him he's just holding the team back, causing the poor guy to break down in tears. Seeing this, Alibaba has a flashback to his own drama with Ka-Sin and realizes that Hakuryu is a reflection of himself. He gives a classic protagonist speech, saying he also used to feel like dead weight, and encourages the prince. With their morale boosted, the group presses on, more united. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Judar appears floating over Sindria with a look that says he's about to cause some serious trouble. The drama never stops. Judar brazenly invades Sindria and goes straight to Sinbad for a little chat. He wants to know why Sinbad is so interested in Aladdin and drops a bombshell. There have always been 3 Magi per era, so where the hell did a 4th Magi, Aladdin, come from? Judar, the king of spoilers, also warns that sending the kids into the Zagan dungeon alone was a terrible idea. At that moment, it clicks for Sinbad. Al-Tharmen agents have infiltrated the dungeon and are hunting his friends. Meanwhile, back in the dungeon, Aladdin, who is no fool, figures out that the creature posing as Zagan is as fake as a $3 bill. The monster doesn't even bother denying it, confirming it's just a construct before dropping them all through a trap door. Their destination? The real Zagan's body, which is just waiting for dinner to be served. Desperate to save everyone, Morgiana finally manages to activate her household vessel. She uses its power to rescue the group and destroy the monster, but the effort drains nearly all of her Magoi, and she collapses like a phone at 1% battery. Alibaba, in full knight in shining armor mode, carries Morgiana towards the treasure room to heal her. But since a hero's life is never easy, a trio of Al-Tharmen enemies appears to block their path and crash the party. Hakuryu decides to take on babysitting duty and carries the village girl and the still unconscious Morgiana to the safety of the treasure room. That leaves Aladdin and Alibaba to face the Al-Tharmen trio, Ifnan, Dunya, and her knight Isak. Dunya wastes no time and pulls the same crazy stunt as Kasin. She stabs herself with a black metal vessel and transforms into a dark djinn to fight Aladdin.
I'm ready to prove that to them all.
Meanwhile, Isak crosses swords with Alibaba. At first, the heroes are on the losing end, but they switch up their strategy and manage to turn the tables. However, Ifnan, acting like an evil coach, gives Dunya a power-up, allowing her to fully equip her Dark Djinn. And Isak, he suddenly heals from his wounds, as if he used a video game cheat code. Far away in Sindria, Judar makes a run for it, but not before dropping one last bit of poison. The barrier protecting the country has been destroyed, and an Al-Tharmen army is on its way to burn it all down. Back in the dungeon, Hakuryu decides he's done with babysitting and returns to help his friends, while Sinbad and his forces prepare to defend their nation from the imminent attack. The battle in Sindria is intense. Sinbad's forces hold their ground bravely, and Sharkan and Masrur even manage to defeat 2 enemy commanders. The problem is a massive, sinister dark mass approaching the island, devouring everything in its path like an evil Pac-Man. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, a superpowered Dunya prepares a massive attack to wipe Aladdin and the others off the map, while Isak protects her. Just as Alibaba is about to be killed by the knight, Hakuryu throws himself in front to shield him, getting his left hand severed in the process. Ouch. Dunya finally unleashes her extreme magic, a rain of swords that seems to vaporize the trio. But it doesn't. It was all an illusion created by Aladdin. The kid's a professional magician. Exhausted, Dunya reverts to her normal self, and Isak, revealed to be merely an inorganic servant, begins to fall apart. Alibaba tries to talk to Dunya, but Ifnan, being the scumbag that he is, fatally stabs her, claiming she's no longer useful. A massive black rook then surrounds Alibaba, showing him Dunya's tragic past. Consumed by rage and corruption, Alibaba stabs Ifnan. The villain dies, but he accomplishes his goal, making Alibaba fall into depravity and transform into a dark djinn. Aladdin tries to talk to Alibaba, but it's like talking to a brick wall since the guy is completely possessed by Ifnan. Luckily, Morgiana and Hakuryu burst in to even the odds, and in a twist worthy of a movie, the real Zagan, the dungeon's djinn, chooses Hakuryu as his master. As a bonus, he even creates a brand new arm to replace the one the boy lost. This help creates the perfect opening for Aladdin to use the wisdom of Solomon and dive into his friend's mind. Meanwhile, Sinbad's crew and Kogyoku are cleaning up the remaining threats in Sindria. Ifnan tries to escape but runs smack into Sinbad, who activates his full djinn equip, Folklore. The villain is shocked to see that even with half his body corrupted, Sinbad has total control over both the white and black rook. It's like having the power of both the Jedi and the Sith at the same time. He uses this bizarre ability to land a final blow on his enemy.
Sora!
Inside Alibaba's mind, Aladdin discovers that a piece of Kasin's Magoi still lives there. With his bro's help, he manages to purify Alibaba's body. What's left of Ifnan is confronted by Aladdin, who wants to know why Al-Tharmen wants to spread chaos. Ifnan recognizes Aladdin as an envoy of King Solomon and shows him visions of Al-Matoran's destruction. Still, he says he won't change his mind and asks to be killed. Alibaba refuses, and Aladdin allows Ifnan's spirit to return peacefully to the Rook. With the dungeon cleared and the treasure secured, Aladdin renews his promise to help Alibaba become a great king. The gang returns to Sindria and gets a rockstar welcome, with everyone celebrating the conquest of Zagan's dungeon. But the party doesn't last long. Hakuryu and Kogyoku are summoned back to the Kou Empire. Party's over for them. We also find out that Dunya, the girl from the dungeon, is alive and resting in the palace, but she'll only talk to Aladdin. Acting like an anime CSI, Sinbad and his team investigate Dunya's black metal vessel and discover it was forged forged in Magnoshadt, Yamaraiha's homeland. This basically lights up a neon sign pointing to the nation being neck-deep in Al-Tharmen's plans. When Sinbad tries to interrogate Dunya about it, things go terribly wrong. The metal fragment inside her reacts and nearly sends her to the great beyond. Using his wisdom of Solomon, Aladdin manages to save her at the last second. However, the victory is bittersweet. They learn that, even with his help, her condition is critical and she doesn't have much time left. Aladdin finally spills the beans to Morgiana and Alibaba. He plans to go to Magnoshadt to study magic, alone. The gang panics since Magnoshadt is the prime suspect for having ties to Al-Tharmen. They try everything to convince him to give up, but the kid is adamant. The next day, while Alibaba is training with his jinn equip, Kou shows up wanting a duel, but Sinbad, who loves being the center of attention, steps in and fights her in his place. The result, Sinbad wins with absurd ease using the power of his jinn, Zepar. After the beatdown, Alibaba and Kou make up and end up becoming friends. Meanwhile, Sinbad promises Hakuryu he'll help him take on Al-Tharmen when the time is right, but the friendly mood is shattered by tragedy. Dunya's condition worsens drastically and she dies by Aladdin's side. After the funeral, Hakuryu and Kou confirm it's time for them to return to the Kou Empire. And despite all the goodbyes and the heavy air of sadness, Aladdin's decision doesn't change one bit. His next destination is still Magnoshadt. Hakuryu and Morgiana decide to play the role of best friends and accompany him to the kingdom of Axia before they each go their separate ways. It's like the end of an era. Hakuryu is heading back to the Kou Empire, and Morgiana is finally going to visit her homeland, the Dark Continent, and Alibaba, the goofball, is already on board the ship, planning to surprise the gang, but his plan backfires and he's the one who gets surprised, because everyone already knew. Embarrassed, he reveals his plan. He's going to train with the Yambala gladiators in the Rame Empire to master his jinn equip and control his Magoi. Basically, a training arc to get totally jacked. The journey continues for several days. The ship is almost at Axia, and just when you think everything's going to be okay, pirates surround the ship. The peace didn't last long.
Oh, you've got great eyesight. Who, me? Let me show you.
Aladdin and his friends charge at the pirates, but the fight is much tougher than it looks. Not just because of the enemy's magic tools, but because they're all children. The situation gets tense, and when the pirates manage to capture Aladdin, the rest of the group is forced to surrender. The mini-pirates plunder the ship and take the young Magi with them. Powerless to do anything, Alibaba and the others disembark in Axia and discover that kidnapping children from the poor districts is common there. And the worst part, the military refuses to help, using the excuse that they're busy with a potential invasion from Magnoshadt. But the people accuse the government of simply not caring because the victims are poor. Outraged, Alibaba decides to handle the situation himself. That's when Hakuryu reveals he has a plan. He hid a seed with his magic among the loot and can track the pirates. Meanwhile, Aladdin meets the pirate leader, Al-Madora. She spins a tale about how the children are better off with her than in poverty with their families, but Aladdin doesn't buy it. And right as he confronts Madora, Alibaba, Hakuryu, and Morgiana kick down the door to the hideout to start the rescue. The problem is, they're shocked to see that all the enemies are children, including some very young ones. Meanwhile, Madora uses her magic tool, the Holy Mother Halo Fan, to mess with Aladdin's head, preying on his feelings for his missing mother. When Alibaba and the others arrive to save him, she does the same to them. That's when we discover the secret to her crew's bizarre loyalty. They're all under the fan's spell. Madora's plan is to use this brainwashing on future world leaders while they're still children to basically control the world. Fortunately, Aladdin, who's no pushover, manages to break free from the spell and helps Alibaba and Morgiana snap out of it too. But in the chaos, Hakuryu falls for the villain's trick. Completely hypnotized, he turns against his own friends to protect Madora. It just got personal.
How good are you? No!
The showdown kicks off with a brainwashed Hakuryu attacking his own friends. The fight only stops when Alibaba manages to break his metal vessel, causing the guy to pass out from exhaustion. Meanwhile, the villain Madora tries to make a run for it but is captured by the military. Back at the port, the enraged locals start attacking the captured Madora. That's when Hakuryu shows up to stop the chaos, but not to defend her. In front of everyone, he simply draws his sword and cuts off the pirate's head. A brutal scene that makes the other pirates swear revenge on him. Shocked, Alibaba confronts him, and Hakuryu comes clean. His true goal is to get revenge on his own mother. It turns out she joined forces with Al-Tharmen and helped his uncle steal the Kou Empire's throne, orchestrating the murder of Hakuryu's father and older brothers. It's a family drama on a Game of Thrones level. Seeing that Medora's hypnotized children are nearly lost, Alibaba takes responsibility, gives an inspiring speech, and convinces them to move forward together. As they set off for Sindria, Hakuryu decides to leave without saying goodbye. Morgiana finds him, and he confesses his love and proposes to her, but gets shot down. Alibaba is worried, afraid that Hakuryu will suffer from killing his own mother, just like what happened with Cassin. But Aladdin steps in and decides to have a private talk with him. After the farewell, Aladdin returns, and the trio prepares to go their separate ways. Aladdin, Alibaba, and Morgiana have one last farewell party, promising to meet again as soon as possible. Then, they each go their own way. Alibaba and Morgiana travel by sea, but to different destinations, and Aladdin flies off on his magic carpet to Magnoshadt. It's like a graduation farewell scene, but with more magic and fewer boring speeches. Along the way, Aladdin gets tired of flying and hitches a ride in a carriage. The only rule is not to bother the other mysterious passenger. Of course, the trip was never going to be smooth. Some thieves attack the convoy, and the so-called secret passenger reveals himself. It's none other than Prince Kolha of the Kou Empire. Kolha doesn't have much patience for robbery. He activates his metal vessel and simply deletes all the thieves from the map in an absurd display of power.
How annoying.
After the slaughter, he and Aladdin end up becoming friends and continue their journey together. Upon arriving in Magnoshadt, the new friends part ways. To enter the country, Aladdin has to pass a magic test. The problem is, he's wearing a special jewel from Yamuraiha that prevents him from using the Rook from his surroundings. It's like fighting with one hand tied behind his back. Using only his internal power, he barely passes the test without anyone discovering he's a Magi. Aladdin enrolls in Magnoshtadt's Magic Academy, but since he had to hold back during the test, he's thrown into the lowest class of all, the 6th Kodor. There, he ends up under the thumb of Professor Myers, who puts the students through a grueling physical training regimen worthy of a Rocky movie. She warns them they have 2 months to pass another test, or they'll be expelled. He also meets his roommate, Titus, a somewhat snobby guy who looks down on him for being from a lower class. But after seeing Aladdin's effort, Titus has a change of heart, and the two become friends. The training is so brutal that many drop out, but Aladdin and 4 other students persist. After a month, Professor Myers reveals the secret. The physical training was meant to strengthen their bodies, and in turn, increase the amount of Magoi they can use. The result is immediate. The students discover their magic power has grown exponentially. It's like leveling up your mana bar in a video game. After another month focused on magic lessons, the day of the exam arrives. Aladdin not only passes, but aces the test with perfect scores. As a reward, he skips directly from the lowest class to the highest, from the 6th to the 1st Kodor. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Alibaba finally reaches his destination, the Rain Empire. His plan is to train with the Yambala gladiators, but it starts off on the wrong foot. Since he lost Sinbad's letter of recommendation, the gladiator Toto doesn't even give him the time of day, and even defeats him in a fight without breaking a sweat. His luck turns when the Nando brothers, the same ones from the Fog Troop, are now rich casino owners and decide to take Alibaba in. After recovering, he seeks out the gladiator leader, Shambal, and asks for a rematch against Toto. This time, he uses his head. Instead of going for a brawl, he manages to remove her armor without hurting her. Genius. Shambal is impressed and examines Alibaba, discovering a serious problem. His body has 2 different types of Magoi, as if 2 souls were fighting in the same space. If he doesn't learn to control this, he'll not only never master his Jinn equip, but he'll also end up dead. Shambal agrees to train Alibaba, but nothing in this life is free. To pay for his lessons, he'll have to fight in the Colosseum, his grand debut against a giant violent beast, and to ramp up the tension, Rain's high priestess, Scheherazade, is in the audience, watching from her box seats. Alibaba enters the arena for his debut, but the situation is dire. He takes such a beating that he's severely injured and tries to give up, but the guards don't give a damn. The crowd wants a fight to the death, in true gladiator fashion. With his left arm broken and nearly knocked out, Alibaba has a flashback to his childhood with Cassin. He remembers how the two of them used their wits to defeat bigger, stronger enemies. With that inspiration, he starts using the arena's environment to his advantage and, in a spectacular turnaround, manages to defeat Garda. In that exact moment, Shambal has a revelation. The 2 Magoi and Alibaba's body have finally merged into one. He realizes the second Magoi had always belonged to Kasin. His friend's spirit was there all along. A few days later, Alibaba recovers, and we find out he used the prize money to buy Garda's freedom. Now, the giant ape has become his #1 fan and personal bodyguard. With all that, Shambao finally accepts Alibaba as his true disciple. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Morgiana finally reaches her destination, the Dark Continent. Morgiana's journey ends in bitter disappointment. The Qatarg region, where she was born, is completely deserted, with not a single Fanalis in sight. To make matters worse, a group of slain traders tries to attack her, but who shows up to the rescue? None other than Alibaba's brothers, Abmad and Sabmad. Sabmad explains that after being exiled from Balbadd, Sinbad gave them a new job. They became archaeologists, tasked with investigating the mysteries of the Toran culture. They tell Morgiana that the Fanalis moved to the other side of a gigantic canyon called the Great Rift. Without a second thought, she decides to cross it, even after being warned that no one who enters ever returns. At the bottom of the rift, Morgiana finds a house and is welcomed by the Magi, Yunon. He confirms the legend. Once she crosses to the other side, she can never come back, not even with the help of his magic. Meanwhile, in Magnoshadt, Koha finds out his father, the Emperor, has died, and he needs to return home. Before leaving, he sends an intimidating message to the government of Magnoshadt. Either they surrender, or the Kou Empire will invade. He also has a quick meeting with Aladdin. Back in the Kou Empire, Hakuei is reunited with her brother Hakuryu, but the mood between them is heavy. And to complete the family drama, their older brother and the big boss of everything, Cohen, appears before them. Here we have a family reunion in the Kou Empire, but it's not to celebrate Christmas. The father is dead, and the heirs are gathering to decide who gets the throne. Hakuei is pensive, remembering how her brother Hakuryu became a dark and gloomy guy after obtaining Zagan's power. He even became a general, but his army is basically a collection of monsters he captured, like some evil Pokemon trainer. Everyone is betting that the eldest brother, Cohen, will be the new emperor. But then comes the plot twist. Their mother, Empress Jiuquan, pulls out a will supposedly left by the deceased and names herself the new ruler. This stirs up major drama in the court, but she swears she'll only hold power until they've conquered the entire world. A very humble goal. After the meeting, Hakuryu tries to convince his sister to join him against their mother, but she refuses. So he decides to go after her alone, full-on Avenger mode. He wants to avenge his father and brothers who were betrayed by her, but even with his new power, he gets his butt kicked.
That's enough.
That's when Judar shows up, offering a power-up like a deal with the devil if Hakuryu is willing to curse his own destiny. A year has passed since Aladdin said goodbye to his friends. Now he's focused on his studies and absolutely crushes the final exam, creating a giant mirage with his powers. Everyone at the academy is already betting he'll be the top student, the king of the Kodor. But to everyone's surprise, the prize goes to another guy, some dude named Titus Alexius from the Kou Empire. While settling into his new room, Aladdin is approached by Titus himself, who wants to be friends since he recognizes Aladdin's genius. But Aladdin, in his peculiar way of making friends, decides to the guy to make sure he's not a girl. Obviously, Titus is furious. The fight only stops when the Academy's Chancellor, Matal Mogamet, appears. It's announced that Aladdin and Titus will have a battle to test their skills. The fight is insane until they both accidentally reveal jewels embedded in their arms.
That you are a Magi.
The Chancellor stops everything and says he'll recommend them both. But when Aladdin tries to talk about the jewels, Titus freaks out, attacks him with everything he's got, and knocks him out. Titus is sent to solitary confinement, and while Aladdin is unconscious, we see Titus receiving a message from Scheherazade, who reminds him to continue his mission, the sole reason for which he was born. So intense. Aladdin recovers and comes face to face with Titus in his room, who questions him about his intentions. Then, the masks come off. Titus confesses he's a spy sent by Scheherazade, and Aladdin reveals he's a Magi. With their cards on the table, they become friends. Just like that. The next day, Aladdin, Titus, and Sphintus head out to explore the city, but they're warned that the 5th district is a forbidden area until they graduate. Like the curious protagonists they are, they ignore the warning, put on disguises, and sneak into the place. There, they discover that the 5th district is basically a giant slum for the unemployed, who make up 2/3 of the city's population. Exploring the area, they uncover the grim truth. The residents are having their life force, their magoi, slowly drained. This is all to supply power to the magical tools used by the citizens of the wealthier districts. They find a little girl, Marga, who collapses near them from the drain. Shortly after, some magicians show up, and, seeing that Marga's energy is nearly depleted, they simply toss her into a giant pit for disposal. But as she falls, Aladdin and Titus leap in after her to the rescue. Things just got serious. The fight only stops when their teacher Myers arrives to lay down the law. Take him to the big boss, Moghamet. Aladdin expects the scolding of a lifetime, but the Chancellor turns out to be a surprisingly decent guy. He forgives the boy and even reveals that he knows his teacher, Yamaraiha, and took care of her for a while after she was orphaned. What a plot twist! The next day, the students are given a free pass to visit the 5th district, all because Titus wants to keep an eye on Marga's health. But first, Moghamet decides to give them a little history lesson to explain why Magnoshadt is the way it is. Using a spell that works like a memory projector, he shows the past from 70 years ago when the kingdom was under different rule. Magicians were treated as human batteries by the royalty, forced to use magic until they collapsed, which ended up killing Moghamet's wife. After struggling immensely to become stronger, they earned a place in the court, but this only sparked jealousy among the nobles. To make matters worse, when a mysterious illness appeared, guess who they blamed? The magicians, of course. They were hunted down and then thrown onto the front lines of a war against the Partavia Empire. They even won the war, but at a great cost. Many magicians died, including Moghamet's only daughter. Seeing that the royalty couldn't care less about their sacrifices, Moghamet went into full-on revolution mode. Moghamet finishes his story. With the people's support, the magicians revolted, overthrew the monarchy, and founded Magnoshadt, basically a magical revolution. His speech is so compelling that most students buy into his ideals, except for Aladdin and Titus, who remain suspicious. A while later, Moghamet asks Titus to take him to Marga in the 5th district. Once there, he surprises everyone by inviting the girl to live with him on the surface. Aladdin, who tagged along, realizes the truth. Moghamet is kind to the little girl, but he no longer sees non-magicians as human. He treats them like pets, and Aladdin senses this mentality will lead to disaster. Marga undergoes some exams, and the diagnosis is bittersweet. She can't be cured, but her life can be saved. Titus is immensely relieved. Meanwhile, Aladdin attends a class with the magician Irene Smirnov, who demonstrates some experiments with Black Rook. This confirms our hero's suspicions. Magnoshadt is mixed up with Al-Tharmen. Later, Titus receives a call from his superior, Scheherazade, ordering him to return home because the mission is over. But Titus refuses and runs to ask Moghamet for help. He reveals that just like Marga, his lifespan is running out. Titus drops a bombshell. He is a clone of Scheherazade, created from her body and with her rook to act as her proxy. The problem is, he has an expiration date, like a replicant from Blade Runner, and only has a month to live. Moghamet tries to calm the boy down, but suddenly Scheherazade herself possesses Titus's body to speak with the Chancellor. It's like a supernatural video call. She demands her clone back and issues an ultimatum. Either Magnoshadt surrenders and is annexed by Rame or the Kou Empire, or things will get ugly. Out of patience, Moghamet simply hangs up on her, severing the connection and freeing Titus.
You saved me.
After explaining everything to Aladdin, Moghamet is questioned about Al-Tharmen. He admits he was once their ally and that they created the dark metal vessels together. The problem was, they broke off the partnership when Al-Tharmen started giving these weapons to non-magicians, like Dunya. The next day, Magnoshadt decides the best defense is a good offense and declares war on the Rame Empire to secure its independence. The news spreads, reaching Sinbad and Koha. Meanwhile, Rame dispatches its elite force to handle the situation. Alexius, one of the dungeon capturers, and his Finalese Corps. Their mission is twofold: conquer Magnoshadt and bring Titus back. And amidst the warships, who should appear? Alibaba, hoping to find Aladdin there.
Aladdin, see you soon.
The showdown finally begins. The Rame army, commanded by Mu, arrives at Magnoshadt's doorstep, but Moghamet and his people refuse to surrender. Rame's soldiers charge, only to be met by a magical barrier that flings them away. Basically, an anime style, you shall not pass. The magician's retaliation is brutal. While chaos reigns, Aladdin is wandering the city on a side quest. He's searching for something extremely dangerous that, according to him, will kill everyone if it's not contained. No pressure, right? Back on the battlefield, the rain main forces use explosives and manage to break the first barrier. It's on, but the magicians of Magnoshadt aren't playing around and unveil a long-range weapon that looks like an energy cannon, wiping out hundreds of soldiers at once. To protect the troops, Mu and the Fauna-Lys enter the fray, and how do they stop the attack? By simply throwing giant rocks to block the blasts. Brute force at its finest, Aladdin realizes that the weapon is sucking the Magoi from the people in the 5th district to the point of death, like an energy vampire. Without a second thought, he flies over and destroys the cables powering the thing. He then heads to the front lines just as Mu defeats Titus and tries to drag the kid back home. Aladdin interrupts their argument and asks everyone to calm down and cooperate to end the war once and for all. Aladdin's peace talk goes nowhere. Mu isn't interested in talking and the fight continues. Seeing that diplomacy has failed, Aladdin resorts to his trump card. He unleashes his Magi powers and joins the battle to help the magicians against the Fauna-Lys. The tables have turned. Most of Mu's comrades are down, so he decides to go all in and uses the power of his djinn, Barbatos. Accompanied only by his sister and his subordinate, he charges forward. The Fauna-Lys trio gets close to the second barrier, but before they can bring it down, Aladdin summons 3 sand giants to act as security, like a bunch of supernatural bouncers. With his powers at their peak, the Magi unleashes a massive pillar of fire just to intimidate the invaders. Far away, on a ship, Alibaba sees the explosion and wonders if it was his friend's doing. Aladdin reaffirms that he wants to end the war without any more deaths. Mu, being stubborn, challenges him to stop his army without killing anyone, and Aladdin shows him how it's done. He dissolves the giants, turning them into a massive sandslide that sweeps the entire Raim army back to the beach. A brilliant, non-lethal solution that gives Mogomét time to repair the barriers. Aladdin then delivers the final message. If they try to advance again, he'll just push them back, as many times as it takes, until the soldiers' morale is completely shattered. Mu is furious about the humiliation, and decides to stop holding back. He fully equips his djinn to kill Aladdin and take Magnoshadt once and for all.
Barbatos!
But just as he's about to unleash his extreme magic, who shows up to save the day? Alibaba. He uses Amon's power to simply nullify the general's attack. He arrived in the nick of time. Shortly after, Scheherazade herself appears and requests a private meeting with Aladdin, Alibaba, and Titus in a neutral location. Things just got serious. At the meeting, Aladdin gets straight to the point. He asks Scheherazade to stop the war. The reason? If Mogomét is pushed too far, things will get ugly. Apparently, the Chancellor has gathered an absurd amount of Black Rook, which could cause the same catastrophe that destroyed Al-Tharmen, humanity's original world. And worse, this has been Al-Tharmen's plan all along. After this bombshell, Scheherazade agrees to a ceasefire and drops an even more shocking revelation. Her young body is a clone, just like Titus's. Her original body is dying, and when it does, all the clones will die with it. As a final gesture, she allows Titus to spend the rest of his days with his friends. But the peace is short-lived. News arrives that another empire, the Kou Empire, is also invading. When Mogomét learns of this, he loses his patience and declares that from now on, he will deal with all invaders himself. Berserk mode activated. Deep within the 5th district, Mogomét decides to go all out. After falling completely into depravity, he takes control of a giant mass of Black Rook to deal with the invaders. Just in time, the Kol army, led by Kolha, bursts onto the scene to start the fight, but Mogomét isn't messing around and summons 3 giant dark djinns. Kolha's forces are repelled, and even after equipping his djinn Laraje, the fight is hopeless as the monsters keep regenerating. Kolha becomes exhausted and orders a retreat, but his soldiers are so loyal they refuse to abandon their prince. Then we find out the reason for their devotion. Laraje chose Kolha precisely because he takes in those no one else wants, like outcasts and members of fallen clans. He's built a team of misfits who follow him to the very end. When all seemed lost and Kolha was about to be defeated, who appears to save the day? None other than Alibaba in his full Amon Jinn equip, pushing back the dark djinns.
Let's do this! Amon!
With more monsters appearing, Alibaba prepares to use his extreme magic to end the party once and for all. But before he can do anything, the monsters are wiped off the map by the forces of Cohen, his older brother who has arrived to help. the Dark Jinns are temporarily defeated, but another wave soon begins to attack the Rain Fleet. Scheherazade, Mu, and the Finalist Corps have to hold the line so the rest of the forces can retreat safely. Meanwhile, back in Magnoshadt, Titus is having a full-blown existential crisis, clinging to Marga. Not only is his time running out, but he also doesn't know what to do to help all the people he's befriended. Marga gives him a moral boost, telling him to follow his beliefs to the end, no matter the cost. Inspired, he goes to the Magoi to find Mogamet. Convinced that the Chancellor doesn't truly hate non-magicians, Titus uses the last of his Magoi to pull him out of the furnace, dying in the process. But the furnace doesn't stop working. On the contrary, it becomes a Magoi vacuum, sucking Mogamet's life away and transforming into a gigantic mass of energy. This energy opens a portal in the sky, and a massive sinister creature begins to emerge.
What is this? How could you crave still more Magoi?
Empress Gyokuin and the members of Al-Tharmen celebrate, revealing this was their plan all along, to summon their god. Aladdin recognizes the creature and lays it out plain and simple. That thing must be stopped at all costs. Aladdin goes straight to Kou to ask for help. To convince him, he makes a brilliant move. He summons his, Alibaba's, and Kolha's jinns all at once. The jinns themselves confirm the warning. If that corrupted god isn't stopped, it will drain all the white root from the world, and all life will be extinguished. Basically, a global game over. Kou, more interested in the secrets Aladdin is hiding, agrees to help on one condition. The young Magi must answer all of his questions afterward. While Kou summons his other siblings, the giant medium continues to spit out dark jinns that attack the people of Magnoshadt, and not even Scheherazade and the magicians can handle them. Aladdin, Alibaba, and Kou's metal vessel users arrive to fight, but the medium is protected by an incredibly powerful barrier.
What the hell is going on here?
At this rate, they'd run out of energy before breaking it. That's when Kou shows why he's the boss. He equips the Jinn Agarez, summons a volcano out of nowhere, and uses the heat to power up his other Jinn Astaroth, allowing him to attack relentlessly. Even so, his power alone isn't enough, so he pulls Alibaba into the fight. Since Alibaba's Armon is also a fire Jinn, the two use the lava to supercharge their vessels, and by combining their extreme magic, they launch a devastating attack against the barrier.
Let's do this!
Not even the combined strength of Alibaba and Kou was enough to shatter the medium's barrier. To make matters worse, the creature closes the volcano's mouth, cutting off the pair's Magoid refill. Shortly after, the medium transforms into a bizarre humanoid monster that absorbs the white root from everything it touches. Like a giant dementor, it leaves Kou and Alibaba in critical condition, prompting Kou's siblings to join the fight. They combine their attacks and manage to knock the monster into the ocean. But the plan backfires completely. It's like throwing a gremlin in water after midnight. The medium grows even stronger by draining the rook from the sea. Meanwhile, in the palace, Gyokuin is watching the whole thing from the sidelines, popcorn in hand. She begins to have a flashback to when she was one of Solomon's Magi in Al-Tharmen before she betrayed everyone. It's clear she has a hand in all of this. Back in the battle, Aladdin and the others are at their limit, and the monster begins to drag the corrupted god down from the skies. The situation is critical, but just when all seems lost, boom! Sinbad appears to save the day, and he's not alone.
The first class singularity! King Sinbad!
Real vessel users?
He's with Drakan, Yamaraiha, and the elite troops of the Seven Seas Alliance. Aladdin is stunned, and Sinbad explains that Yunnan and Morgiana gave them the heads up. And speaking of them, they both arrive to join the party and turn the tide against the medium. The cavalry keeps coming, while magicians rescue the wounded. Mu and the other generals from Rain also join the fray. Seeing that everyone is exhausted, Scheherazade makes a drastic decision. She sacrifices herself, releasing the last of her Magoi to give the generals one final power boost. With this extra strength, all the dungeon capturers unite and launch a combined attack worthy of a season finale.
I leave it in your hands.
Extreme magic!
The impact is brutal, but the medium survives. However, it hesitates, and Aladdin notices a small light inside. Realizing it has to do with Titus and Morgiana, he uses the wisdom of Solomon to take a spiritual journey inside the monster, with Yamuraiha going with him. There, they find Morgiana being comforted by the Rook of Titus. The Chancellor regrets everything, and a shocking revelation comes to light. He was the one who kidnapped Yamuraiha as a child, but she says she holds no grudge and that he will always be a father to her. After their heart-to-heart, Morgiana departs for the great flow of Rook. With that, the medium collapses. Joquin celebrates because even without the corrupted god, the world's barriers have weakened. Meanwhile, in the afterlife, Scheherazade refuses the chance to be reincarnated and passes it on to Titus instead. Back in the real world, the conflict has already shifted. The Kou Empire wants to take over Magnoshadt, but Sinbad puts his foot down, declaring the country is now under the protection of his alliance. In the middle of the argument, Titus reappears, brand new as Raim's new Magi, and to top it all off, we see Judar and Hakuryu, who were watching from afar, collecting all the Black Rook. Hakuryu bids farewell to his friends, announcing that he has chosen a new path and that they are now enemies. The mood turns heavy.